Dr. James Lindsay, I've bumped into you in all the best places. We're here at an anti-Semitism conference in Jerusalem. What's your message?
Well, I mean, we're not just at an anti-Semitism conference in Jerusalem. We're here on Holocaust Memorial Remembrance Day as well, 81st one, right? And so that's important to remember. My message, I mean, obviously the big picture message is that never again is now. We have rising anti-Semitism kind of from the three axes, the left, the radical Islamists, and then now is new anti-Semitism on the right. I've been warning about it for a while. I got in trouble, called it woke right. But trying to get people to understand where this comes from, where this, politics of friend and enemy, this grievance-oriented, envy-oriented, alienation-centered mentality comes from, and how it metastasizes and becomes very radical, very dangerous movements that threaten our free societies and Western democracies.
You and I have been talking. I really love our in-depth interviews for years now. And I remember when you first said woke right, and I confess, I didn't quite understand it because I thought that was an oxymoron, like jumbo shrimp. How can you be woke and right? I think I finally get it now. Tell me a little bit about where it came from, though, because from my whole life until about 2 years ago, the idea of someone in North America on the right being anti-Semitic was almost unheard of. I mean, I suppose it's slowly, and then very quickly it happened. How did it start? I'm talking about a lot of online groypers, they call themselves, and others, even some would-be Christian leaders are taking an anti-Semitic line I've never seen before. Where's it from?
There are three answers to that question, kind of meaningfully. One is reaction. We've been under this woke left tyranny, frankly, in Canada especially now, tyranny, for at least a decade, very clearly. 2015, by that point, it's clearly a problem. 2020, it's undeniable and taking over our societies. And there's a reaction to that. And that reaction has alienated white men. It's alienated a lot of white Christians in particular. And you alienate somebody long enough and they say, we're going to band together and fight back. And they take on a toxic identity politics and start looking for philosophies that justify it. And they take elements from the thing they're reacting to and say, the tactics they're doing work, so we can do that. So that's the reaction. Another is that this is a current that has been there. The groypers are not new. The alt-right was a conversation people were having 10 years ago as a concern. 2014, 15, 16, 17, it erupts at Charlottesville. President Trump calls it out, and it goes underground. So it's been insinuating into the conservative movements ever since, playing nice, making friends, fitting in, filling positions. Short march into the institutions, you might call it, but it's the continuation of the alt-right, which is this alternative European-style conservative philosophies, but right-wing philosophies, not conservative, that anti-conservative, that are now making their way into the North American continent, very alien to us. And then the third answer is foreign powers. The enemies of America, the enemies of the free world, the enemies of Canada, I mean, your prime minister now notwithstanding, are very invested in splitting apart our countries to take over, to destroy America, the great Satan, as it's called, here in the Middle East by certain players. The Chinese regime has every incentive to try to break American and Western hegemony in the world. The Russians, besides the fact of wanting to get back on the world stage and always playing these KGB games, have the insult of having lost the Soviet Union in revenge. So there's a new axis rising around the world, which I think, sadly, Canada is now declaring allegiance to, or your prime minister at least has. There's a new axis rising, and they want America to fail. They want Israel to fail. They want Western democracy to fail. And so what will they do? Seed these movements, the existing alt-right, this growing reaction, with the worst ideas possible, to fragment everything, to make everything worse, to isolate people, to set people who are friends as enemies now, and to transform the world to their own advantage, and they'll sweep in and pick up the spoils when things are broken. So three sources: reaction, foreign interference, and this long-running kind of existing movement of radical right-wing European-style politics that's been hiding under the surface and is now trying to emerge.
Tucker Carlson, who I think is the most respectable of the woke right, he was a hero of mine for years. I looked up to him. I was delighted to be a guest on his show from time to time. And I've seen him say, I'm worried about Sharia law. I'm worried about radical Islam, conspiracy theories about 9/11, disrespect the victims that day. Like, I saw him say reasonable national populist conservative things. Now he's saying 180 degrees the opposite. was, and I'm not asking you to read his mind, and none of us can, but what's your theory about how a great leader of conservative populism is now talking up in his own way Maduro and promoting every anti-American tyranny, says he hates Christian Zionists more than anything. His daily newsletter is often 20, 30, 40% about Jews in Israel. I don't want to pretend he was a close friend, but I admired him. How did he do a 180?
I would like to know. I don't know. You mentioned, some of his new alliances. It came out just the other day. I saw it. It's all in Arabic, that he's going to be speaking at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's 2030 conference coming up soon with some new company. Unexpected characters like John Kerry and Hillary Clinton are on the docket alongside him, which is a, interesting company for him to be keeping. And again, in Saudi Arabia, of all places as well, for a 2030 agenda beyond that. But no, I don't know if this is how far back this goes. I know he has a different political philosophy. I don't know how much of an opportunist that he's been over the years. In 2019, he was already talking about post-liberal economic policies, agreeing with in many respects openly. It was a controversy at the beginning of 19 with Elizabeth Warren, with her so-called Accountable Capitalism Act that she had put forth at the end of the previous year. That caused a stir. He's had this paleo-conservative leaning for a while, but for some reason in the past 3 to 4 years, I think it's a little longer than just since October 7th or just in the last year or so, he's been trending more and more in that direction. He's been interviewing characters, like on stage. Gadi Tal brought up that his interview with his infamous interview with Daryl Cooper, who is, a David Irving style historical revisionist, Nazi apologist in truth, to forward the idea that perhaps we've misunderstood World War II and who the good guys and bad guys were, as though it's not a pretty clear moral question to answer. And that kind of was this big signal flare that he's now taking this other direction. I don't know what degree he's emboldened by his new friends. I don't know what degree this is a long running agenda. The text messages previously came out that he was not a fan of Trump. He wished Trump would go away. I think he believes, I'm guessing, that MAGA represents the post-Obama opportunity for a paleo-conservative rise, not to have done so. MAGA stole his thunder. He does like this different economics, accountable capitalism, common good economics, whatever they call it. I don't know how much of it's that. I don't know how much of it's rank opportunism. I don't know how much of it is just these are weird roads. When you take the anti-Semitic road, it's a very one-way street. It's not impossible. Forgiveness it's very hard to come back. So you go this way, you interview Daryl Cooper. What do you say next? Do you say, I'm sorry? Do you back down? What do you do? And there are things that are very hard to come back from. So it's like the old metaphor is crossing the Rubicon. So when he interviewed Daryl Cooper, did he cross the Rubicon? If so, he has one direction to go only, which is forward, either to victory or defeat. And I feel like there's an element of that. He just has gone past where he can easily come back. Maybe there's other motivations for why. Maybe it's personal. Maybe he's made a mistake. But it's hard to come back. So that's, I think, an element in this as well. But he certainly, in my opinion, crossed the Rubicon. If he didn't with Daryl Cooper, once he interviewed Dick Fuentes, Charlie's mortal enemy, after Charlie's death, which, by the way, that interview came out while I flew home from Israel last time. It came out while I was on the plane flying. I'm like, what is this? On an El Al aircraft. What is this? And so once you've crossed these lines, it's very difficult to come back. But maybe he wants to go that way. Maybe he's stuck going this way. Maybe there are other forces compelling him to go this way. But I don't know how he actually comes back. So what is there otherwise to do but now go to a conference with Hillary Clinton and make new friends?
I'm Jewish myself, and so I want to make sure my thinking about anti-Semitism isn't just a personal reaction. And so sometimes I think, okay, let's substitute anti-Black racism. For example, the use of the N-word. Like, that word is so powerful that if someone says it, at least I change my view of who they are, because it is freighted with so many things that it implies. And so there's a social pressure. In polite company, you wouldn't say that. Maybe you would secretly, sneakily say it, but you would never say the N-word loud and proud. And that's what I think. I mean, anti-Semitism, I think, was sort of the same thing. you would be very cautious about it because it would keep you out of certain circles. I mean, but I think that taboo is being smashed to pieces partly because of social media. Ironically, the best thing that's happened in the last few years, Elon Musk freeing Twitter, has also enabled people to do things. And comedians, I think, are doing it because they love breaking taboos. And this one is safer than going after Islam. But that's the thing. Once you've broken that taboo, can someone else come back? I think I see lots of young conservatives, maybe who I consorted with in recent years, and whether it's for attention or clicks or to seem edgy, they're tiptoeing into saying the N-word, so to speak, but about Jews. And
literally,
I feel like they are burning bridges because they're doing something that's not just immoral, it's dumb. It violates conservative principles of take personal responsibility for your life. Don't just blame everything on the Jews. Don't judge people collectively. Well, the Jews did. Like there's a lot of reasons being anti-Semitic can be tempting. This cosmic enemy that caused all your problems. Like there's a lot of reasons people indulge in it, but I'm worried, can they come back? I hope so.
So I'm going to say two things, but the first of the two is like, I think it's like, this is a weird metaphor, and it's easier if we had a visual. But sometimes when you have the little wand and you're taking your kids to blow bubbles for the soap bubbles, right? And it stretches and it stretches and it stretches, and then it breaks off, and it's an orb in the air, right? So right now it's stretching and stretching and stretching, and they're in the tunnel, and they can come back far enough, or it can detach and they're stuck, right? So you go too far in this road, you want to play the edge game, you go too far, eventually the bubble detaches, you're trapped in the bubble, and what does a soap bubble do is it floats through the air for a while, and then it bursts, and it's over. So you don't want to be stuck in the bubble. I wish a lot more young people would realize this is the dynamic they're in. But let me steel man their position. I'm always trying to be as fair to my adversaries and their views as possible. I wish to, honestly, maybe it's a little bit of an intellectual flex. I want to know it better than they do. And then I want to show them I know it better than they do. And I'm very proud of all the things that I think that happened. One of the things I'm most proud of, and it happened recently at Yale. I spoke at Yale and it happened. People come up to me and they'll say, I'm trans, or I'm a communist. And I thought you were going to be a demagogue. I thought you were a blowhard. I disagree with you, but you represented my views correctly. I think that's important. So let me steel man the situation they're in with why this edginess is so popular. And I call this, I have a name for this. This is pretty deep, actually. I'm excited because I got it from a friend, so I can say it's deep. It's not me. It's called the politics of the third rail. So when you have a word like the N-word, is a great example you brought up, or anti-Semitism, and you said within polite society, there's taboos, there's a core where you must not and should not and cannot go because it's evil, because it's wrong, because it's moral confusion and failure and just unnecessary. And then you have this halo around it. So, for example, a few years back in the woke madness, there was a professor, I think he's at USC, he's a communications professor, and he's teaching his communications 300 level class over Zoom, is during COVID years, teaching them, if you communicate with a Chinese businessman, you are going to encounter a very common phrase in Mandarin, which means or here in Hebrew, yeah. It's the filler word. It's when you can't think of it. Yeah. Well, in Chinese, they're very literal in some ways. So it literally means inside thing. Nega. So you'll talk to a Chinese and they'll say something in Mandarin, nega, Ezra. They'll try to remember your name, nega, Ezra.
Someone thought, I remember this story, someone thought that was the N-word.
Well, he was explaining
that it wasn't.
Yeah. Do not think that that's what it is.
Oh, right.
You might be, as a communications class. And somebody watching the video said he used something close enough and it was offensive and he lost his job.
Right, I remember that.
This is what I'm saying with a third rail politic. There are perfectly reasonable things to do. For example, if you were quoting directly to make a historical point from Huckleberry Finn and the N-word's there and you say it, that's called the mention of the word, not the use of the word. You don't declare it loudly and proudly. Right. You used a historically accurate reading from a text. That's perfectly valid. We all know that's perfectly valid, but there's been a grievance mongering around it, like the nega experience from Mandarin, that was not valid. And so in this space, there have been censorship and control of things that are ridiculous, and the left excels at creating this third rail space. And what's happening is these edgy people are stepping into that space, not responsibly, not with clarity, and not following leaders with clarity, but irresponsibly, recklessly, and following not just fools, but actual demagogues.
So they have the instinct of, I want to rebel, I want to break taboos, I want to tell the censors to hell with you, I want to defy, I want to be a rebel, but they're not being thoughtful about it. Is that a summary of what you're saying a little bit?
That's a little bit. It's a little more important how this works, which is that there is an illegitimate taboo that they want to break that transitions into a legitimate taboo, and they don't know the boundary.
Right. You know, you've been very generous with your time, and you're in such high demand here. Everyone wants to buttonhole you, but I have one interesting observation. I think it's interesting. In the last couple of days, I've seen a couple of people who have been part of this woke right. Maybe you take a step back. Kanye West published a full-page apology in the Wall Street Journal where he said, look, I was off my meds, basically. He said, please, I wasn't myself. And I think there was some honesty there. I think there was from the heart. And I mean, I could be wrong, but it felt meaningful. And I see Andrew Tate, who I think has been one of the worst. I feel like things went too far when he was in that van going to a nightclub in Miami and they were all playing the Kanye song Heil Hitler, and they all got banned from all the clubs in Miami. And I think it was the real world coming into the internet world. And he's recently been saying, and Jews aren't the universal problem. Don't always talk about Jews. And like, I see sort of, I sense that he feels like he went too far on the Jew thing. So I feel like some of them are getting a bit of buyer's remorse. And part of me hopes that other young would-be Andrew Tates or Kanye Wests are saying, ooh, maybe I won't go full in anti-Semitism. I don't know. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on those two small observations about Kanye West and Andrew Tate maybe blinking a bit?
Well, I mean, I think it's a fair observation that Kanye may really well have been off his meds and that this is a mental issue. But what would you do if somebody has a visibly known mental issue? You have compassion, you have understanding, you can have forgiveness, but you also recognize you're still dealing with a crazy person. So you don't put them up in a position of authority. You don't hold them up as an icon.
He's a singer, and I think he was built into something much more.
Right. You must understand what these people are and what they represent at them.
And he was a wonderful singer. I mean, the thing is, he transformed his personal capital from great songs into political capital. And that's sort of what Tucker did. He took 30 years of building up capital with the American viewer, and now he's saying, I'm going to draw down my personal capital with tens of millions of people and try and persuade. I mean, in their own way, they did the same thing. They were famous for this. They wanted to capitalize that and do that.
So look, some people are acting in good faith, or so they think, and making mistakes. That's error. Other people are acting in bad faith, and that's malice. The difficult part for us is telling the difference between error, which we forgive, and we welcome people back and help them get on the right course, and we welcome their friendship and allyship afterwards. And then there's malice. So I don't trust Andrew Tate. Flat statement. I don't trust him. I think he's a bad faith actor.
I think he's done a lot of bad things.
I think he's covering his ass. Yeah. I think Nick Fuentes is doing the same thing. He's covering his ass. We have a synagogue that got burned down in Jackson, Mississippi, the only one in Jackson, but the most historic, oldest synagogue in Mississippi, burned down. By all appearances, the character likely followed some of what Nick Fuentes said if he wasn't a groyper outright. Terrible thing that happens. He's finally getting the Jews, calls it the synagogue of Satan, which is not something that Nick says as much as Candace, but he's in this right-wing, edgy orbit, clearly, and his influencers. And there's a moment now where, I mean, we even see Democrats hedging back from this, where it's time to start to back away from this ledge. And some of that will be people realizing they made mistakes. And this is our challenge. Good people have this challenge so much, but there are bad faith actors who are saving their ass to have the next narrative so they can push the next one and get away with it again. And so we have to, the same thing. If Kanye's crazy, maybe he is, maybe he's not, but if he's crazy, we remember that he's crazy in dealing with him in the future. If people have led us in a wicked road, we also must remember that they've been wicked. And so trust is earned, and trust is earned slowly. You can destroy trust in an instant, as you said with people who use the N-word, but it's earned back slowly. We can't be so in a hurry to have a big cross-platformed ally or a powerful friend to say, you know what, everything's fine, come on back in, when the wolf is laughing from under his sheep's clothing. We've got to be discerning. We've got to make those that have acted wickedly hard to discern. They have to go through true penance or be left out.
You know, I could talk to you for hours, but I can't do that here. It's great to see you. I hope to see you in Canada again. We love it when you visit there. And thanks for coming on my show from time to time, too.
Yeah, anytime, that's one.
Nice to see you. Cheers. Ezra Levant here, along with Avi Yamini. I'm in Jerusalem for an international conference of leaders against anti-Semitism. To follow all of our journalism, go to rebelnews.com.